Crestwood's bruises tangled with the wrong girl. Her payback was electrifying. Leona Bellwether existed like a shadow on purpose. Being young, she had learned to be unnoticed. This was important for staying safe when constantly being the new girl. Her family moved all the time because her mother did very special and secret computer work. This meant Leona had been to 5 different schools in only 6 years. Crestwood High was just another stop on her long, solitary journey. She wasn't ugly or pretty, just a plain girl with sandy blonde hair. She was of normal height, but looked like a strong wind could easily blow her away. Her clothes were always boring, faded blue jackets, old jeans and plain shoes. She only talked if someone spoke to her first. She looked at her books or the dirty floor and moved through the busy halls quietly like a breeze. This carefully made nothingness was like her shield. But at Crestwood it was starting to break. It wasn't just one thing causing trouble, but 3 people, all mean and wanting to cause pain. Veronica Lake, Tiffany Baker, and Kevin Shaw. Veronica was the top girl at Crestwood and always looked perfect. Her black hair was always done just right, her makeup looked great, and her clothes looked like they came straight out of a magazine. But inside, she felt unsure of herself, so she put others down to feel better. Tiffany was Veronica's helper, agreeing with everything Veronica said and making her insults even worse. And then there was Kevin. He was a tall, grinning athlete who followed Veronica around, using his size to scare anyone she picked on. They chose Leona as their target. They didn't see her quietness as a way to protect herself, but as an invitation to bother her. They thought her being alone was a weakness to make fun of. The picking on started small, like it always does. A giggle as she walked by, a loud whisper of "Look at the weirdo," a bump in the hall that made her drop her books. Leona, as she had learned, did nothing. She picked up her things, her face showing no feelings, and walked away. She could feel people watching her, feeling sorry for her, but also glad it wasn't them. The teachers were busy and didn't get paid much, so they only saw a student having trouble fitting in. They would say something nice if they noticed, but never helped. Leona didn't do anything because she wasn't scared, but because she was disciplined. Her mother, who always spoke calmly even when talking about fixing really big computer problems, had taught her one important thing: stay in control. "Feelings are like a storm, Leona," she would say, drawing pictures on a whiteboard in their small apartment. "They are wild, you can't know what they will do, and they break things. But control is like a laser beam. It's exact. You plan it. If you use the right amount of power in the right spot at the right time, you can take down a building without wasting any power." She wasn't just talking about computers. She was teaching her how to live her life. So, Leona listened to the insults, the pushes, and being alone. She wrote down every mean thing, every push, not as something hurting her, but as information. She was learning about them, studying how they acted and what their weaknesses were. They thought they were hurting her, but they were just showing her how they were built. The lunchroom was where they liked to do most of their picking on. A few weeks after she started at Crestwood, Leona was walking to an empty table with her lunch when Kevin stuck his foot out in the aisle. It was the same old trick. She fell hard, her tray making a loud noise, and mashed potatoes and green beans went all over the floor. Everyone laughed, especially Veronica, who made a loud screeching sound. "Watch where you're going, silent Leona," Veronica shouted, smiling in a fake way. Leona's face felt hot, like she was burning with shame and anger. The storm her mother had talked about started to come up. She wanted to jump up, use the self-defense moves her mother had also taught her, and wipe the smile off Kevin's face. But she remembered her mother's calm face. Control is like a laser beam. She took a slow, deep breath, stood up, and walked away without saying anything, leaving her food and her pride on the floor. The embarrassment burned like acid, but she kept it inside. It wasn't the right time. The pressure wasn't strong enough yet. The picking on got worse. They stole her homework and tore it up in front of her. They would trap her by her locker, standing around her in a triangle, whispering mean things just loud enough for her to hear. Veronica especially liked to mess with her mind, starting stories that Leona was a weirdo who watched people, that she smelled strange, and that her family was part of a strange group. Each lie was like a small, sharp stone thrown at her. Leona put up with it all, her face not showing any feelings, but inside the pressure was growing. She was gathering more information. She knew Veronica cared a lot about how she looked. She knew Kevin was only mean to impress Veronica. She knew Tiffany didn't have her own thoughts. She understood how they worked, and she was starting to make a plan to take them down. The last straw, the moment that started everything, happened on a cloudy Wednesday afternoon. School had just ended, and Leona was taking a shortcut behind the auto shop, a lonely place with broken concrete and weeds. She was going to the community center, her safe place. Suddenly, they were there, blocking her way. Veronica, Kevin, and Tiffany, looking bored and ready to cause trouble. "Going somewhere, freak?" Veronica sneered, crossing her arms. Leona tried to walk around them, but Kevin moved to stop her. "Veronica asked you a question," he said, his voice sounding mean. Something felt different today, like they were even more cruel than usual. Veronica looked around, and a mean smile came to her face. She bent down and picked up a broken piece of glass. "You know, you're like this glass, Leona," she said, tossing it from one hand to the other. "Ugly, clear, and no one cares if you get hurt." She looked at Kevin. "Let's see if she cries." Kevin grinned and picked up a rock. Tiffany, always following along, did the same. The first thing thrown by Kevin wasn't meant to hurt much. It was just to test her. It hit Leona hard in the back, a sharp, surprising pain that made her gasp. It hurt more than the pushes and the insults. This was hurting her body, and it crossed a line. Another piece, this one from Tiffany, brushed her arm. Then Veronica threw hers. It was smaller, but she threw it hard. It hit the back of Leona's head, right above her neck. Her vision blurred for a moment, a bright spark of pain flashing in her eyes. Laughter. They were laughing. Through the pain, Leona felt clear and calm in a way she never had before. She had all the information she needed. She knew everything about how they worked. The pressure was now too much. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, but this time it wasn't a warning. It was telling her what to do, use the right amount of power, in the right spot, at the right time. She didn't scream. She didn't even move. Slowly, she turned her head, her eyes meeting Veronica's for the first time. The fact that she wasn't scared, the cold, thinking look in her eyes, made Veronica's smile disappear for a second. Leona turned and walked away, the pain in her head and back feeling far away compared to the new, scary plan in her mind. The plan was set in motion. That night, Leona didn't do her homework. She went to the garage. It was her mother's special place, a place for being organized, careful, and using power. Tools hung on the wall in perfect order. Boxes of wires, chips, and circuits were neatly labeled. On a big table in the middle were some of her mother's old computer models, complicated parts of computers with wires in different colors. For the past year, her mother had been teaching her about computers. Not just how to use them, but the science behind them. Electricity, coding, engineering. To her, it was a beautiful and complicated art. Fixing computers wasn't about breaking things, it was about making things better. You took something old and by using electricity in a controlled way, made it into something new. Tonight, she was the artist. She wasn't going to hurt anyone. Her mother had always said life was important. The plan was never to cause harm, just to stop something from working. In this case, that something was Veronica's popularity, her arrogance, her power. And the most important part of that power was her scooter. A brand new, bright yellow scooter her parents had bought her for her birthday. It was her throne, showing everyone how important she was. and she always parked it in the most obvious spot in the student parking lot. Leona started to gather her things. She wasn't building a bomb, not in the usual way. She was building what her mother called a disruption device, something that wouldn't hurt anyone or start a fire, but would cause a lot of trouble. The main part was a small, high-powered battery from an old laptop. The thing that would cause the trouble was a special mix of her own design, a combination of things that, when put together and sprayed out, would make the worst, most lasting, and hardest to remove mess you could imagine. It was a precise mix of oil, glitter, a lot of glitter, and a super strong glue she had ordered online by saying it was for an art project. The color was a terrible, shiny, bright gold. The device was made to stick to the underside of the scooter with strong magnets, and it would be set off by a simple, cheap remote from a toy car. It was smart, exact, and would cause a lot of damage. As she connected the last wire, she felt strangely calm. This wasn't about getting even. This was about fixing a problem. The next few days at school were tense. The bullies, feeling braver because she hadn't done anything when they threw things at her, acted even more sure of themselves. They seemed to sense that something was different about her, but they didn't understand what it was. She was quieter, but it wasn't because she was giving in. It was because she was focused before doing something big. She stood straighter and she looked right at them. She didn't look away anymore. She just looked through them. One person noticed the change. Jake, a quiet boy from her math class who sat in the corner and drew in a notebook, saw it. He saw something new in her eyes, not fear, but focus. He saw her watching Veronica and her friends with a strange, almost scientific look. He didn't know what was going to happen, but he knew things had changed in a big way. The moment came on Friday. It was the day of the big school fair before the winter break. Everyone would be outside on the football field. It was the perfect time. During lunch, Leona overheard Veronica bragging to Tiffany, "We should do something really bad to silent Leona at the fair, something everyone will see." They were planning to accidentally push her into the dunking booth. They weren't very creative. It was the perfect chance. When the last bell rang, the students all ran out onto the field. The air was full of excitement. The band was playing, people were laughing, and students were walking around, happy that the weekend was starting. Leona, carrying her backpack, walked calmly toward the student parking lot. It was emptier now because most people were already at the fair. She saw Veronica's scooter, shining in the afternoon sun like a showpiece. Her heart beat fast in her chest. This was the moment, the last check before pushing the button. She looked around. A few people were walking to the field, but no one was paying attention to the quiet girl in the blue jacket. Quickly, she knelt by the side of the scooter, pretending to tie her shoe. Her hand went under the scooter, and the strong magnet of the device clicked onto the frame. She stood up and walked away, disappearing into the crowd, heading toward the field. The device was set. The trap was ready. She found a spot near the entrance to the fair, far enough away to be safe, and waited. Veronica, Kevin, and Tiffany made a big show of walking toward the center of the crowd. They saw Leona and smiled at each other. The show was about to start. As they got closer, getting ready to do their planned accident, Leona's hand slipped into her pocket, her thumb touching the small button of the remote. Veronica took a step toward her, about to say something mean, but she never got the chance. Leona pressed the button. There was no fire or loud noise. There was just a sudden whoosh sputter sound that came from the parking lot. Everyone turned to look. From under Veronica's prize scooter, a huge cloud of shiny gold spray shot out, spreading everywhere quickly. It wasn't smoke, it was a sticky, liquid mess. It covered the scooter in seconds, sticking to the bright yellow paint, the leather seat, and the shiny mirrors. And then people smelled it. It was a strong chemical smell that made everyone cough and cover their noses. It was a mix of oil, glue, and a mountain of glitter. Everyone panicked. The school fair turned into a mess as students ran away from the gold cloud. In the middle of it all stood Veronica, Kevin, and Tiffany looking shocked. The gold mess had not only covered the scooter, but had also sprayed onto them, covering Veronica's designer clothes and Kevin's Letterman jacket in the sticky, shiny gold stuff. Veronica's face showed how shocked she was, her mouth open as she stared at her ruined scooter. The scooter wasn't just dirty, it was ruined. The glue would never come off the paint. The seat was a mess of oil and glitter. The glitter would be there for months, a constant reminder of her embarrassment. In the middle of the chaos, Leona stood up. She walked calmly toward the parking lot, the crowd moving out of her way as if she were someone important. They stared at her with a new look, a mix of fear and respect. She walked right up to the shocked, smelly trio. They moved back as she approached. She stopped a few feet away, not seeming bothered by the smell. She looked right at Veronica, her voice quiet but clear over the coughing and complaining. "You wanted to push me around," Leona said, her voice not showing any feelings. "I just know how to use computers better." She looked at Veronica for a moment, letting her understand what had just happened. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving behind a ruined scooter, 3 outcasts, and a legend. After that, things changed quickly. By the next day, the story had become a myth. Leona Bellwether, the quiet shadow, was now talked about with respect. They called her the Glitch, or just the Spark. No one even dared to look at her the wrong way. The fear she caused wasn't because she might hurt them, but because they didn't know what she might do. She had shown that she was smart, planned things carefully, and could do things in a cold-blooded way. She had played a different game, in a way they couldn't understand. Respect came after fear. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was powerful. She could now sit anywhere she wanted in the lunchroom, and no one would say a word. The space around her was hers. Veronica, Kevin, and Tiffany were ruined socially. The insurance company said Veronica's scooter was a total loss. The glitter and oil stayed on them for days, showing everyone how embarrassed they were. They became the new outcasts, avoided and made fun of in whispers. A week later, a sad, crying Veronica came up to Leona by her locker. I'm sorry," she mumbled, not looking at Leona. "For everything." Leona looked at her, not happy that she had won, but with the calm look of a scientist watching an experiment that was finished. "I know," was all she said before turning and walking away. It wasn't about forgiving her, it was about seeing the result. The problem had been fixed. Leona had found her peace, but not by hurting others or becoming a monster. She had used her special knowledge to take down a system of meanness in a careful way. She hadn't thrown a punch. She had caused a chemical reaction. She had learned the most important thing her mother had taught her. True power wasn't about being the loudest or causing the most damage. It was about being in control. It was about knowing exactly where to use power to make the whole rotten thing fall apart on its own. She was still quiet, still watched, but she wasn't a shadow anymore. She was someone important, showing that the quietest people can have the most power, waiting for the right moment to use it. 20,886 characters.